Hi, this is Nick Dawson from Talkhouse, and you're listening to the latest episode of Nobody's Ever Asked Me That. It's the spin-off series of the Talkhouse Podcast, where I talk to filmmakers, musicians, and writers, and ask them questions they've never heard before in an interview, in an effort to discover a different side of them and understand them better. We've had a little summer break, Nobody's Ever Asked Me That, but are now back with a vengeance, with a killer episode this week and another humdinger next week too. When I think about who I want to talk to for these episodes, it's always a question of curiosity, which is to say, am I intrigued about the person and think they're really interesting, but also, are they a curious mind who will be willing to forego the comfortable routine of hearing the same old predictable questions and go somewhere new and unexpected? With Tim Blake Nelson, the answer to both is a resounding yes. Nelson is known as a character actor and made his name with his hilarious breakout performance in the Coen brothers' Oh Brother Where Art Thou back in 2000, and has since been in a slew of notable movies such as The Good Girl, Minority Report, Holes, Syriana, Lincoln, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Old Henry, and Nightmare Alley, just to name a few. He's an egoless performer who disappears into the characters he plays, and who you know will be great, even if the movie isn't. Nelson is currently starring in the taut, vividly sketched drama Bang Bang, playing an aging boxer who gets back in the game by training his grandson as a way of keeping him out of trouble. Nelson is outstanding, and it's heartening to see him in a lead role that allows him to really flex his muscles, both literally and figuratively. Nelson is very far from just an actor, though. He's written and directed 6 features: The Eyes of God, O, The Grey Zone, Leaves of Grass, Anesthesia, and the forthcoming The Life and Deaths of Wilson Shedd. He wrote the 2023 novel City of Blows and has another book, Superhero, coming out in December. And he's also a playwright. His latest play, And Then We Were No More, starring Elizabeth Marvel, just started at La Mama in New York City a few days ago. So yeah, prolific, multi-talented, somebody who's truly committed to the work. In a conversation that was personal, profound, and often surprising, we talked about everything from his morning routine to his recurring dreams, from his earliest childhood memories, some of which are truly remarkable, to a pivot point in his life that was transformative. I went in wanting to understand what makes Tim Blake Nelson tick, and came away feeling like I understood him with a clarity I had not anticipated. So just to start, I'm intrigued. Do you have a morning routine? If you do, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I get up at about 7 or 7:30. I eat a bowl of dry granola with 4 shots of espresso and watch the morning news on CNN.
Mm-hmm.
I'm to my computer by 8:15 or 8:30.
Mm-hmm.
I write until 11, and then I row
Oh, okay.
on an erg, on a rowing machine. And then I have lunch. And that's every day when I'm not acting or editing a movie or traveling.
Mm-hmm. I'm really fascinated by the regimented aspect of it. You kind of take in your fuel, you get input from the world, you write, and then you have a physical practice. The sort of the muscle memory of those different aspects, like, does it allow you to sort of optimize what you're doing? Does it get you in a particular headspace at different points does it allow you to go deeper because this is so familiar? I'm intrigued about the way those different pieces fit together.
Yes, it does. I live by the credo, which was written by Juvenal in the 2nd century AD. I believe I had that right. Mens sana in corpore sano, a sound mind in a sound body, which is an Epicurean principle. And people think when they hear the word Epicurean or an epicure, that it's somebody who is, I don't know, sybaritic in their tastes and habits, and goes to extremes, and is gluttonous and only seeks pleasure. But actually, that's not what it is. It's about making choices that maximize your ability to experience pleasure. And pleasure comes in all sorts of forms. It's very pleasurable of me to feel good about myself.
Mhm.
And so that means I'm a very loyal husband. I'm a very attentive father. I give lots of money and time to different organizations.
Mhm.
I also love drinking wine every night,
Mhm.
but never to excess, because then I'm getting my body off center and therefore I'm less able to experience pleasure the next morning when I want to be
Mhm.
waking up feeling well and having a good breakfast and getting to work and write, which is what I love. Or if I'm acting in a movie or directing a movie, getting to direct and act. And so it's an entire philosophical approach, which to me encompasses all of life, whether it's the psychological, the spiritual, or the physical.
Mhm.
And it does go back to mens sana and corpore sano.
Mhm.
I like to be fit, healthy, able to take on the world in a vigorous way, whether I'm writing, giving to others, enjoying the pleasures of life physically, myself, all of it.
Mhm.
And I've, wake up next to my wife of 31 years, and um, that's also a pleasure.
Yeah. How long did it take you to land on this regime for your day? Because it seems like uh, maybe something that evolved over time, or did you settle on it very early on?
Well, yeah, it evolved over time, but it was also influenced by the realities of my life at different stages. So
Mhm.
when we had three boys in the house, it was getting up early to make breakfast for them, get them to school. And so it wasn't waking up at 7:30, it was waking up at 6:30. With one of the boys, the first one, I took him to school every single day because we lived close enough. It was about a 15-minute walk. And so that ritual was something entirely different. We would go and we would either eat at home or sometimes as a treat, we'd have a croissant at a bakery nearby in New York City. And he would ride on my shoulders all the way to school
Mhm.
and right up the stairs and into his classroom. And only then would I put him down.
Mhm.
And then I would come home to write. So, and then we had the two more boys, and that ritual was different. And so now we're what they call empty nesters because our last one is in
Mhm.
college. And so the morning is mine, and
Mhm.
this evolved out of that.
Yeah, it's great. If you had no commitments to anybody or anything for a week, what would you do with that week?
No commitments to anybody or anything. It wouldn't be much different than the way that I spend my life now. I'm pretty boring in terms of my daily routine.
Mhm.
What I love to do is work all day, cook dinner, have a couple of glasses of wine, and either read or watch a movie.
Mhm.
Um, and would I go and do a liveaboard and scuba dive because I love to scuba dive?
Mhm.
Maybe, but you talk about being unaffiliated and having no responsibilities. I would want to do such a thing with my loved ones.
Yeah.
So with scuba diving, my middle son and I scuba dive together. I would want to bring him along. If I
Mhm.
were going to go visit, go spend a week in Paris, I would want to do it with my wife.
Mhm.
If I were going to go to Eastern Europe, I would want to do it with my oldest son because, like me, he has a fetish for all things Eastern European.
Mhm.
And so your question is a smart and provocative and an interesting one. But the notion of affiliation is what gives me great pleasure. I'm with the woman
Mhm.
with whom I want to be.
Mhm.
Uh, I have three eccentric boys as
Yeah.
children. I love spending time with them. And I'm living a version of my life that is way beyond what I ever imagined possible for myself in terms of
Mhm.
getting to write and make movies and put plays up. And so it's not even something I ever think about.
Mhm.
I think your question is a good one because it's premised on the fact that most of us are at times unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And so we want to say, were I unshackled by burdens and obligations
Mhm.
and the tedium of daily life, where would I go? What would I
Mhm.
do? But that's just
Yeah.
not my reality right now.
Yeah. You were touching on sort of, the fact that the different facets of your career, the playwriting, acting, directing, your novels as well, that this sort of exceeded your expectations maybe that you had as a young person. I'm interested to know sort of the way in which those pieces came together, like the confidence that it took to continually expand sort of the realms in which you were operating creatively, and whether, each edition kind of bolstered your sense of self or the way in which you felt those other parts of yourself could be expressed.
Well, I think if you can be a polymorph, it impacts all the stuff you do in a positive way if you're open to the synergies between the various pursuits.
Mhm,
There's a singer-songwriter from West Texas named Terry Allen who really encourages this, and he's passed that advice on to his disciples. And one of them, Steve Earle, passed it on to me, which was to encourage that.
mhm,
And so, yeah, in a sense, it's confidence, but more importantly, it's been to enrich the constituent parts of all the different ways of telling stories. So
mhm,
writing a novel helps me as an actor.
mhm,
Acting in a movie helps me as a director. Directing a movie helps me as a playwright. Writing plays helps me as a novelist. And it's just this kind of, I don't know, water cycle in a
mhm,
way that just everything's just feeding into another and it's just cycling through. But I guess the unhealthy aspect of it is that I was raised by a German Jewish mother who was an incredible, incredible human being,
mhm,
remarkable human being, and a great role model, and a true embodiment of the Hebrew term tikkun olam, which is repair the world. Just
mhm,
lived an incredible life and impacted a lot of people in positive ways, many of whom didn't even know her. She also instilled in her children, I'll call it an uncomfortability around not doing anything, around
mhm,
laziness. We were just driven. It was a very intense upbringing, particularly when it came to school.
mhm,
But there was a very clear delineation between being good and bad, and
mhm,
it was a very Manichaean moral universe. And
mhm,
to be good meant working and producing and accomplishing.
mhm,
We were just really driven. And the way that matriculated into as a psychological reality in adulthood is that I am a person who cannot, to quote Pascal, sit by himself alone in a room
mhm,
unless I'm writing. Then I love sitting by myself
mhm.
alone in a room.
Yeah.
But I can't sit in a room and do nothing, or I beat the shit out of myself
Mhm,
psychologically. So I'm a workaholic, and that very much drives me.
mhm.
And it has resulted in a lot of output, but it hasn't always been so healthy.
Right. Over the years, have you found ways to refine that so that it is more healthy, so that there are boundaries in place that, promote self-care?
Well, I didn't say I don't take care of myself
Okay.
because I still find a way to get 8 hours of sleep a night. And I, my only vice really is 2 to 2.5 glasses of wine a night. Um,
Mhm,
Otherwise, I eat very healthily and I exercise every day. So, and that goes back to main sauna and corpore sano. I'm very, very disciplined about that. But maybe I guess you could say psychologically, I think I'm ultimately going to pay the piper later
mhm,
because I honestly don't know what I'm going to do when I'm incapacitated to the extent that I can't act, I can't write, I can't direct. I suppose writing will be the last to go, but that's going to be very, very difficult. Uh, and I fear that. And then the only answer I can come up with is, well, let's not worry about that now. And then I just work harder to avoid worrying about it.
mhm. When you were talking about sort of the roots of that work ethic, and sort of its connections to your mother and her worldview. I'm intrigued to know sort of like how much of your relationship with work is tied to success or approval or validation, because obviously, my relationship with work is very similar in the sense of like it was instilled in me from a young age that sort of to be productive is to contribute to the world, to have integrity, and that came from my mother as well. And I'm also a workaholic, so it's like I try not to look outward too much for fulfillment or signs that I'm doing what I should be. I try and sort of have that be a sort of inner compass, but I'm intrigued to know what it is for you.
Well, if I needed validation to keep working from others psychologically,
Mhm,
I probably would have stopped certain of my pursuits a while ago, because you could go back and read some of the reviews of, that I've gotten as a playwright through my life, and they've been savage.
mhm,
Uh, some have been really good. Same with my movies.
mhm,
Um, some have been really well received and have made money and did well critically. Others have been not so well received, and really hurtful things have been written about the work. Ultimately, in what I do, because even as a novelist, I do depend on others feeling like they can make money off what I produce. What's most important about incoming affirmation is that it gets people to go see the movie, go see the play, buy the book,
yeah,
want to put me in a movie because that'll get people to want to go see that movie. It's
mhm,
just as simple. It's a very clear and simple calculus that you have to accept if you're going to choose to go into this.
mhm,
And that's where affirmation really matters. And it's taken me a long time to realize that. I have a play that's opening on Sunday, and I'm happy with the play.
mhm,
Are there some changes I, could make if I had forever and 2 more weeks of previews? Yeah, but I'm happy with what I did.
mhm,
And the worst that's going to happen if I'm eviscerated critically for it is that it'll hurt for a few days. But even worse than that, in a larger sense, is it just makes somebody else producing my next play or
right,
actors wanting to act in my next play more unlikely. And that's really where it's lastingly problematic,
mhm,
not hurt feelings.
yeah.
And nothing is going to stop me from writing and acting so long as I can do it.
I want to change gears a little bit. I'm always intrigued about people's dreams. Do you remember your dreams? Do you ever write them down, or are there any dreams that you recall clearly?
You know, I wrote down a dream. The last dream I wrote down, I dreamt the perfect plot for a play.
Mhm,
And then I wrote it down, and I woke up and went right to the jottings.
mhm,
And it was just silly and cockamamie. Uh, so no, I don't write my dreams down. My take on dreams, and I guess I've read Freud on dreams, but that's pretty much it.
mhm,
And that's probably pretty dated at this point, is that at least I use them to work shit out.
mhm, for sure.
And so I'm grateful for them, but I don't write them down. I do have certain recurring dreams. Uh, One of them is that I have this stack of plays and screenplays, which is now actually kind of true of screenplays, but certainly not of plays,
Mhm,
that are just ready to be made.
mhm,
And all I have to do is just give them one after another to directors, and just year after year have a play up.
mhm,
And that's an interesting fantasy, absolute fantasy dream. And then the other one is I made this movie called The Gray Zone,
mhm,
and I'm very proud of it. But it's a Holocaust movie about Hungarian Jews in Auschwitz. And It's in English with American actors and one British actor. There's several other, one British main character, and the rest of them are American. And I have this dream in which I get to make it in Hungarian, German, and Yiddish.
Mm,
I think that would be a better movie than the one I made.
sure. Sure. But in a way that goes back to what you were talking about before in terms of like the critical reception that you receive out in the world. That version of the film probably its commercial prospects are much more limited just because of the realities of the world we live in. I'm intrigued with both those recurring dreams though, like what the feeling is like when you see that stack of scripts for plays, for movies, and when you envision that other version of the gray zone, is it a sense of excitement or of freedom or of pressure? Like, how does it? Because I
Freedom.
feel like those, it's freedom.
It's a positive fantasy,
Hmm.
not a negative one.
Hmm.
Yeah. It just presages productivity and longevity and vitality.
That's great.
It's kind of pathetic. I
Why is it pathetic?
don't know. I feel like I'm living a really good life now, but I'm laying a trap for myself. And so it's concerning. I look at my wife, who's such an incredibly wise person, and she's making such different decisions. And it's really interesting to experience the person who's the closest to me in my life and with whom I've now been involved for the majority of my life. We've been
Mhm.
together. And she has just said, I want to stop working. I want to pull that back. And there's this other stuff that I want to experience. And I want to make room for the unknown in my life. And I just want to get off the wheel.
Mhm.
And I marvel at that. Uh, and I think it's probably I don't think I know that it's a less myopic approach to life.
That's interesting. For you, is the wheel, or maybe we can put that in quotation marks, where you want to be? Is that your sweet spot, or is there this other place, sort of parallel to your wife's, that you could be going that doesn't feel so comfortable?
No, the wheel is that's what I want to wake up and get on. And hopefully it's not the gerbil's wheel, which is to
Yeah.
run and go nowhere. But I always have liked that metaphor. I think it's a good metaphor.
You were talking before about what happens when your ability to act, to write, to direct sort of ebbs, and what's left. And I'm sort of interested about the parallel with your wife and sort of the direction that she wants to take. And I'm wondering what's there for you. Like what you said before, you're maybe sort of storing up trouble. Like what would be the direction that you could take if that time sitting at the page or on set goes away?
Being with my wife, uh, being with my children, my friends, my grandchildren, I and and hopefully continuing to write.
Mhm.
And if I can't do that anymore, then read more, I guess, and try to find solace and peace in that. Maybe I'll be in Aminence, Greece. and uh and then if I'm a vegetable, just do away with me.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. I mean, I agree that hopefully that's not something that you're going to have to face ever, or at least not for a long time. I'm always interested to know from people like, what is your first memory, or the first one that maybe really sort of means something to you?
One of my earliest ones, I had a lot of problems with my eyes as a kid and had surgeries. And I remember my first experience with with general anesthesia
Uh-huh.
and waking up in a hospital and wondering when the surgery was going to happen, and it had already happened.
Yeah.
Um, Also associated with my eyes, I, again, German Jewish mother,
Mhm.
I had what's called a lazy eye, and
Did you wear the patch? I had a patch for my lazy
I
eye.
had the patch,
Hmm.
but I was whatever 6 years old,
Hmm.
and so I would. if I really wanted to see something, I would rip the patch off and use my
Yeah.
good eye to look.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my mother would get upset with me because she'd been told, uh, you really have to do this to strengthen your other eye, or
Mm-hmm.
you could be blind in your other eye
Mm-hmm.
if you don't work it. And then you'll only have one eye. And if you lose that eye, you're blind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not to mention being able to have perspective. It's, lots of other reasons you,
Yeah.
you want two
Yes.
eyes.
Yeah. Helps.
Uh, um, and so I kept tearing the patch off, and she would put more tape on the patch, and then I would tear the tape off, and my face was raw, and I was cheating and constantly cheating, and I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
And so she went and asked the eye doctor, well, what do I do here? And he told her, well, if it were my grandkid, he was an older guy,
Mm-hmm.
I would tie his hands behind his back.
Wow.
And so that's what my mother did. And she said, she's very smart. She said, we know that you don't want to be pulling the patch off, but it's your hands. They keep
Yeah.
misbehaving.
Yeah.
So we have to put them in jail. We have to
Right.
so we have to restrain them. And so I remember walking around with a patch and my hands tied behind my back.
Wow. This was only at home, presumably?
No,
No. Wow. How did that feel?
it was embarrassing and to be out in public, and also the reasons behind it were embarrassing because I felt like I didn't have any discipline and I was a bad kid and all of that. So it was not easy. I don't blame my mother. What the hell else was she going to do?
Mhm.
Um, but it wasn't a good situation for me either.
It's funny. You were talking before about recurring dreams, and I have a similar past. I had with a lazy eye, I had a glasses, a patch. Probably the recurring dream that I have is that my eyesight is fading, or it's
Ah,
by the end of the dream it's gone. Maybe that's pretty classic, but I don't know. I think it's interesting that your recurring dreams are so positive and so kind of affirming, and mine are still totally driven by fear. I also have the losing teeth, which is pretty classic Freudian.
yeah, yeah. Uh, sure. I mean, the problem with my positive dreams is I wake up and it's not a reality.
Right.
uh, but it's fun to live in a positive dream.
Yeah.
And I love sleep, and who doesn't, right? Um, but sleep for me holds depression at bay.
Hmm.
It's huge for me. I really do feel like in my dreams I'm working stuff out of which I would otherwise be incapable of solving.
Yeah. For me, like, my struggle to get enough sleep historically has been that facing those moments when I'm lying in bed and not asleep and having to be alone with my thoughts until I started meditating. That was a very uncomfortable place for me to be. That being with stillness, being there no being no buffer between me and my conscious mind was really hard. And it's something that I have over the years learned to just sort of sit with. But probably the reason that you have these very healthy dreams and I have these sort of fear different is possibly because I'm still catching up in terms of like working through the backlog. So you have your backlog of scripts. I have my backlog of like unprocessed shit that my dreams have not quite kind of pared down yet.
I would take a more positive attitude about it in your shoes. And this is what I say to myself when the dreams are more of a negative or at times terrifying manner is, oh, I'm working stuff out. That's good.
Yeah.
And it demonstrates a desire on your part to be healthy and
Hmm.
sorted out, not
Yes.
sorted,
Yes.
uh, um, for your conscious life. That's a good
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Going back to that image of you with your hands behind your back out in the world, it makes me think about this discipline that you have in that routine that we were talking about. And I'm interested about the transition from Tim, the kid whose hands wanted to do something other than they should, and that deeply ingrained sense of rhythm and routine.
So much of who and what I am actually coheres with what it is my mother did,
Mm-hmm.
because I was just psychologically beaten into the being I've become.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, you couldn't exist in our family if you weren't accomplishing things, and if you weren't playing by the rules, and if you couldn't look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm a decent person. It was just a very structured upbringing with family dinner every night. You were expected to perform at those dinners. We were assigned books outside of school to read.
Uh-huh.
We would summarize them at the table.
Uh-huh.
My parents even had us write essays outside of school.
Wow.
They were called paragraphs. They were paragraphs. And
Yeah.
you had to write a paragraph, 5 paragraphs a week on the subject of your choice. And they
Wow.
were graded by our parents. It was a peculiar kind of upbringing, particularly in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Did this come from your parents' own upbringings?
More my mother's.
Mm-hmm.
She her father was incredibly educated,
Mm-hmm.
and education and scholastic achievement were prized in her home growing up. And she went off to Bryn Mawr College and studied philosophy, graduated in the late 50s, magna cum laude,
Mm-hmm.
and just, she raised her kids in a strict intellectual tradition,
Mm-hmm.
but also a strict moral tradition.
Yeah.
A lot of Hebrew school.
So when you left home and that sort of structure wasn't there anymore, did you rebel against it, or did that ingrained stuff remain?
No, it was successful. It worked. Never rebelled against it. I was dissolute until about the 7th grade. After that, I gave in,
Yeah.
which isn't to say, I didn't have issues with alcohol. I spent a night in jail.
Mm-hmm.
For public intoxication. I played a little hard at times, but never ultimately at the expense of stuff that was more important.
Right. What do you think the trajectory would have? Would you have ended up in the same place had you had sort of a period of like serious, rebellion, or like a Rumspringa before you return to the fold, or whatever it is? Do you think that your path was always to end up in this place?
No, where I am now, no. Where I've ended up now is only partly my responsibility.
Hmm.
It's also luck. I chose the right woman to marry. Uh, we had kids who were a lot of work, but they're all healthy uh, in mind and body.
Hmm.
I was in the right place at the right time to get certain roles,
Yeah.
like "Oh brother, where art thou?"
Sure.
That that wasn't just my doing. It was the Coens wrote a great script. They happened to know me. They needed an unknown in the role for various reasons peculiar to that movie
Hmm.
or specific to that movie. And so I was it. I was near at hand, and they offered me the role, and the movie did well, and that changed my life as an actor.
Hmm.
And that gave me this career in which, while I was writing, I was meeting all these other actors and establishing a reputation and relationships that, where I could cast my movies. And
Hmm.
that's the way I've been able to make the movies I've written. And, so it's this combination. And a lot of it has been luck.
One of the questions that I'm always interested to know from people is, kind of touching on our brother, like a simplistic outsider view of your life is that that's sort of the pivot point. That's the everything before and everything after. But I'm intrigued to know for you, when you look back on sort of the arc creatively, personally, is there a pivot point for you where things shifted? Maybe one that's, I don't know, is it also a brother, or is there one that's more subtle, that's more specific to you and what you experienced?
Oh, brother was the big one, but probably the most important one, going back to my mother, is that in the spring of my freshman year in college, she came to visit me and asked what I was going to be doing that summer. And I said I was going to go back to Tulsa and stay at home and be with her. She was recently divorced and lonely uh, and angry. Um, and she said, well, I'd love to have you at home, but what do you want to do with your life? And I'd gone to college to major in classics.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to be an archaeologist, probably,
Hmm.
or maybe go into the academy and teach, um, be a professor or high school Latin teacher, maybe. And she said, well, you always acted. Why don't you go and try that for the summer instead of coming home and getting some menial job? You have no responsibilities in your life. Getting back to your
Yeah. Yeah.
question, you don't even have a girlfriend. Go take a chance and try something out because this is the time to do it. And
Yeah.
I went and acted in a summer theater, and that was that. I kept on with my classics major, but I came back and was fully committed to pursuing acting. I wouldn't have done that without her.
I think it's so interesting the way that we have these people in our lives that see things that we don't. The
Mhm.
obvious version is that we would be the ones to be in touch with that rather than, somebody else who doesn't live in our headspace. But do you still have people in your life who see you maybe in ways that you don't see yourself?
Yeah, my wife, Joel and Ethan Cohen, this writer, novelist named Will Chancellor,
Hmm.
um, Ari Oster,
Hmm.
Amanda Seyfried,
Yeah.
uh, Markwing Davey, the theater director, Doug Hughes, another theater director, Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold.
Hmm.
Yeah, there are plenty of people, and I have a rich life in terms of my friends.
That's great. I guess to finish on, like, when you think about, I mean, legacy is a big word, but when you think about like the things that you've done, that you've contributed creatively, what's the balance between like what is already achieved and what you still want to do?
Oh, there are just certain movies I want to make. I wrote a play that was up in 2018, I think, called Socrates, and I originally wrote that as a movie, and I'd like to make that film.
Hmm.
But in the larger scheme, it's more a version of being able to continue the life I'm living now, because again, it's so beyond where I imagined I would get. If I can just continue to do this, that would be just fine.
Excellent. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate your generosity and thoughtfulness in your answers.
Well, I enjoyed talking with you, Nick. This is quite a unique venue you have here and program. So it was my pleasure.
Thanks so much to Tim Blake Nelson for talking with me, and thanks to you for listening. Bang Bang is out now in theaters, and Nelson's new play, And Then We Were No More, runs at La Mama in New York City until November 2nd. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the theme music is by The Range. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the Talkhouse Podcast, and keep your eyes and ears peeled for upcoming episodes of Nobody's Ever Asked Me That, as there's lots more good stuff in the works. Most immediately, an amazing conversation with the legendary Crispin Hellion Glover next week.